Hello everyone, and welcome to my very first official Disney vlog. My name's Rachel Cable and this is Disney Cable Magic. So for my first vlog, I thought instead of making you all wait for me to finish editing all of my videos and putting them together for my recent Disneyland Disney California adventure trip, I decided to make a tips and tricks video just for all of you, because while I was in the parks I was getting lots of DMs and text messages and Facebook messages of people just asking me questions about what certain things are like and what they should do when their trip comes up. So I thought rather than making you all wait to watch my videos where I do go over a lot of this stuff, I would just put together a shorter video and just go through those items that I think will help you on your trip, especially if you have one coming up soon. So that's what this video is today. I think I have about 15 or so tips that I'd like to share with you. I hope that they help, and I hope that you find this video very useful with your planning for your upcoming Disneyland trip. So let's get started. So this video ended up being incredibly long. I am very sorry. I talked forever and there's a lot of information in this video, maybe too much for you to take in one sitting or more than you even wanted to know. So what I am going to do is I'm going to put timestamps down below in the comments or in the about section of this video, letting you know which topics I cover at what time, so that if you're just looking for information on one thing, you can quickly find that and just scrub right through to where you're looking instead of watching this incredibly long video. But if you did sit through it all or you're just watching little parts of it, thank you so much for watching my very first vlog. I really enjoyed creating it for you and I can't wait to create more and give you more tips and tricks and any other information that you might need. And if you think of anything that you'd like to know for your future trip, leave a comment below. Let me know what you want me to check out or find out for you or answer, and I'd be more than happy to do that for you. So I hope you enjoy this video. If you do like it, I'd love for you to subscribe to watch the next ones, because I'm going to definitely be creating more and I cannot wait to take you through Disneyland starting next week. First thing on my list that I want to talk about is overall stamina for your trip. If, like me, you spent most of 2020 hibernating and not doing a lot of your regular activities or going to theme parks, museums, zoos, you might not have the same stamina for the theme park that you used to have. You may have done a lot of walking or running. I did try to keep up on fitness. I wasn't great at it, but I tried. And I definitely felt it the first day back. Prior to 2020, I used to go to the parks a couple times a month, and each time I'd probably do around 15 to 25,000 steps each and every time. And it definitely would hurt and I'd feel it a little bit the next day, but I was fine. I could bounce back and probably do Disney the next day without any issue. What I found on my first day back at Disneyland this time is that I did not have the stamina to do Disney like I used to do. I went on opening day, April 30th, and if anyone was watching the weather that day, it was about 90 degrees at the high, and I was not used to wearing a mask in that heat. Even though I live in California and I've been wearing a mask for over a year, when it was a 90, 100 degree day, I basically just didn't do anything because there wasn't a whole lot to do last summer. So wearing the mask at Disneyland in that heat definitely took me by surprise. I knew it was going to be uncomfortable, but I was not prepared for just how smothering it would feel. I will say that I did adjust as the day went on, and once I got used to it, it really wasn't that big of a deal, and by the second half of the day, it just kind of felt like any other day wearing the mask. But what really hurt me were a few things, a few mistakes, amateur mistakes that I made that I don't want you to make if you're going to Disneyland soon. So the first one is, don't hit the parks too hard too fast. I went in there just so overwhelmed and so excited to try everything that I definitely was walking faster than I should have, and I was not taking enough breaks earlier in the day. So what I found was that by 11 or 10, I still hadn't really taken a break to have water, or to have a snack, or to really relax and cool down after that initial rush into the park. And I started to get a headache, I started to feel dizzy, I was feeling sick, every ride was making me feel sick, and that's not a normal Disney experience for me. So eventually I took a step back and I realized what I had done. I got too excited, I went in there way too hard, too fast, and it definitely affected my first day back at the park. Part of that is just the walk that I had to do to get to the line, which is something that I will go over later in this list. So to sum up, tip number 1 about stamina, go easy your first day back. I know you're excited. I know you can't wait to go on all of the rides, and I promise that you will probably be able to do most of the rides. They have the line system down pat and everything runs pretty smoothly. But you don't want your first day back to also be a painful day. I want you to enjoy it. I want you to feel comfortable throughout the day. Make sure you take regular breaks. You don't want to forget to have water because you're running from ride to ride to ride and then realize, oh, I need to have a water break, but I need to go find somewhere where I can sit down and do that. So just take your time. Even if you have to set an alarm on your phone, or if you have an iWatch, put like a little alarm on there just to remind yourself every hour or so to step aside, take the mask off, sit down in the shade for a few minutes and have a good sip of water. I promise it will definitely make the rest of your day way more enjoyable. So another question that I got a lot while I was in the parks was about mobile ordering. And I actually heard a lot of people in the parks complaining about mobile ordering because they didn't realize that it was sort of a mandatory thing if you wanted to eat while you were there. So I just want to give you a few tips on that so that you're prepared and you don't make the same mistake that I did on Touch of Disney Day, and that some of the other guests I noticed were making while they were there in the parks this weekend. So tip number 1, the majority of quick service restaurants are requiring mobile ordering. So the way to figure out which ones are going to require it and which ones aren't, if it's a snack cart, like selling popcorn, churros, pretzels, things like that, they don't require mobile ordering. In fact, you can't even mobile order there. So you can just walk up and grab a snack, a bottle of water, whatever you need. I recommend using those for when you're hungry and you just need something fast, or if you just really want some water or some soda or something to drink and you don't want to have to do a mobile order because you're only going to wait maybe 5 minutes to get your snack or drink that way. If you want an actual meal with sides and like a heftier portion of food and maybe a coffee or something like that, look into the mobile ordering because that's where you're going to find most of that. So that's tip number 1, is you're probably going to have to mobile order the majority of places that you want to eat. If you want mint juleps and Mickey beignets, you're going to have to mobile order. And I know a lot of people were quite disappointed to find that out in the park on the day. And then the tip that I have that really helped me while I was there this weekend was one that I learned the hard way while I was at Touch at Disney. When I was in Touch and Disney, that's when they introduced mobile ordering in Disneyland or Disney California Adventure. And it got to be later in the day. It was freezing the day I went. It was like a high of 60. It was windy, it was cloudy, and I just wanted a cup of hot coffee. I just wanted to hold something warm, drink something warm, and give myself a boost of energy. So I looked up the coffee cart and I was like, oh, mobile ordering. All right, let's order a cup of coffee. 4 hours was the earliest that I could get my coffee. 4 hours for one cup of coffee. I couldn't believe it. It didn't make sense to me that the coffee cart would have such a long wait. I don't know if the coffee cart was still doing mobile ordering when I was there this weekend, but I was definitely very grumpy by that. And then I was like, well, fine, I'm gonna get something warm to eat then. Couldn't find any food options for 2 hours of when I was looking. So I was definitely getting hangry. I was getting very grumpy with everything. So I actually decided to leave the park and go eat somewhere else because I couldn't get food in a timely manner, and I was getting hungry and I was cold, and it just wasn't worth me being in the park waiting 2 hours, especially since I was by myself, so I didn't have anyone to wait that time out with. So since that was a really bad experience for me, when I went to the parks this weekend, I was like, I'm not letting that happen. And what I did is when I got into the park while I was waiting in line, first ride I went on was Haunted Mansion. I got in line right away, and I immediately pulled up my phone and put in my first mobile order for Mickey beignets and a mint julep, so that when I got off that ride, I immediately was going to have a drink and a snack. Then while I was eating my Mickey beignets and having my mint julep, I made 2 more mobile orders, one for lunchtime and one for dinner time. Now you can change those throughout the day. You can change your order window if you want to adjust it and come a little bit later or a little bit earlier, or if you absolutely need to change your item or what you're ordering in there, you can go talk to a cast member and tell them like, look, I have a mobile order for an hour from now, but I really want to change the drink I'm getting. I'm sure they'll be able to help you out with that. In fact, at one point I ordered a burger and didn't realize it didn't come with the waffle fries. So this was at California Adventures Smoke Jumpers Grill. So when I got up there, I was like, hey, can I add fries? Is it too late? He's like, if you do it right now, place the order and show me your confirmed order, I'll just put it through and give you the fries now. So there are ways to amend your order if you have to, but get those mobile orders in early, especially if you think you want to eat around popular times like lunch and dinner, so that you're not waiting 2 hours to get your food like I did, because that is not going to make anybody happy when you're at Disneyland. All right, so parking options for you. There are several parking options that you can actually use when you're going to Disneyland. I'm going to tell you about the two that I used this weekend and what I thought of each one. On day one, opening day at Disneyland, I used Harbor Boulevard to, I did a walk-in entrance. I actually was staying at a hotel down at the convention center, so it was about a 20-minute walk, and I walked down Harbor and then just straight into the entrance that way. I like going in that way. That is usually my preferred method because I don't like dealing with all the cars backing up going into Mickey and Friends parking garage, especially if you're going close to opening. If you're going later in the day, it's usually not too bad, but close to opening, those cars can be wrapping all the way out and down almost to the highway, and it can take quite a long time. I've actually waited an hour to get through that parking garage. So when I can, I like to stay right on Harbor and then just walk down. There are some places right on Harbor that will actually allow you to park your car there all day for a fee. Sometimes it might even be cheaper than Mickey and Friends parking garage. So overall, my preferred method is to stay somewhere within walking distance of Harbor Boulevard entrance. But I don't always do that. Sometimes I drive up from where I live. It's just about 45-50 minutes for me. And when I do that, I do park at Mickey and Friends parking garage. So on day two, I did the Mickey and Friends parking garage just so I can compare what the difference was. I got to the park a little bit later on day two. I got there around 9:10 is when I pulled into the parking garage, and I wasn't at Disney California Adventures gate until 10 o'clock. So it took a good 50 minutes for me to get into the parking garage and then walk all the way over there. So right now, if your only option is to park at Mickey and Friends because you're coming from far away and you couldn't find a parking option on Harbor Boulevard to use, just keep these things in mind. One, you're probably going to wait a long time to get into that parking garage. And after this weekend, Disneyland's only going to be opening up that garage 30 minutes prior to the park opening. I think that's a little crazy because it can take an hour to get into the park, and if they're only opening up 30 minutes before and you're not first in line, expect to have a long wait getting through that parking garage, and just be prepared for that so that there aren't any grumpy people in the car, because I know I would be pretty grumpy if I didn't realize that was going to happen. I know it's going to happen and I still get grumpy. And two, it is a long walk from the parking garage to the parks. They're not running the trams right now, and the reason why I think they're doing that is in order to make sure there is no bottlenecking coming down the escalator from the parking garage. They're actually pulling the people right away to the right and then through where the trams would normally pull up, where you load them, and they're then making you go through security in reverse. That's to keep from crowding in that area outside where you normally would wait to go through security. So because they have to do it that way, they can't run the trams right now. So I think that that's actually going to last for a while until the social distancing measures either lessen down to 3 feet or are done away with. I don't think trams are coming back for a while, unfortunately. So I'm sure you've all seen online people complaining, saying it's a long walk. Don't underestimate that. It is a very long walk. In the beginning of the day, it wasn't that bad. When I went there yesterday and I walked to the park, I was like, all right, I'm just going to take it slow. I'm not going to stress. I'm not going to try to run to get to the gate. I'm just going to relax. It really wasn't that bad. And then I walked a whole day. I did like 25,000 steps yesterday. So the beginning of the day didn't ruin it for me. However, I tend to stop going to Disney when my feet tell me to stop going to Disney. And that happened right around 6:30, so I decided to beat the rush out. That was the longest walk of my life. I feel like every time I looked up, it was like tunnel vision. It just kept stretching and getting further and further away. I think it took me a good 20 minutes at least to do that walk. And then I kept thinking to myself, I was like, I could have walked back to the hotel I stayed at with all of this. And had I known that, I probably just would have gone in the Harbor Boulevard entrance again. So if you are parking, if you're staying nearby Disneyland and you're somewhere on Harbor Boulevard, I recommend taking that harbor entrance and just walking. It is going to be a long walk, but so is that walk back to the parking garage. And if you plan on doing opening to close and you park at the parking garage, you're going to have that long wait to get in, and then you're going to have a long wait to get out. So that's where I would recommend trying to come in the harbor side if you can do that. If you are driving from far away and you couldn't get parking nearby, then Mickey and Friends parking garage is your only option. So just keep all those things in mind. It's still not a bad option. I like being able to park there. It makes me feel safer because I do travel by myself a lot when I come to Disney. And I feel a lot safer walking through the parking garage and being on Disney property when I'm by myself, especially late at night, than I would maybe walking to my hotel by myself. So there's just some things to think about, be prepared for. And then the one downside I would say about Harbor Boulevard right now is they are not lining anyone up outside the tickets before opening because there's just not enough room to do social distancing for both of those parks there, especially since they are opening at the same time. So what they're doing is you can come through security and everything on Harbor side, but then you're going to walk through the Esplanade, and then they're going to pull you all the way down the tram line, and you're going to line up behind people that are coming from the parking garage side. So once you get into the parking garage, you kind of have a leg up on getting into that line. Otherwise, I'd say that Harbor is probably your fastest way into the park. Both are going to require a lot of walking right now. When the tram lines come back, that Mickey and Friends parking garage is definitely an easier journey into the park because you just hop on the tram and it takes you right there, and it is a lot less stressful. But for right now, I think both have their pros and cons, and you're going to have to figure out which one's best for your family. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is wearing a mask in the park and what that was like. It was very tough. Like I said earlier in the video, I haven't done that much outside in the height of summer out here just because there wasn't really a whole lot to do and it wasn't comfortable wearing the mask. And I wasn't prepared for how uncomfortable that was going to be when you're just stuck outside in the sun all day in Disneyland. So bring a few masks with you. I definitely recommend that. I only brought 2 and I wish I brought a couple more just because it's nice to put on a fresh mask when you're like sweating it and feeling gross in it all day. And also make sure you're planning those regular breaks because the only time you're going to be allowed to take your mask off at all is when you're sitting in a designated rest area, and they're not hard to find. You'll see, you know how they have like planters, and around the planters you used to be able to sit down on that like little concrete around it. They actually have markers to make sure people are social distancing. So you'll see like you can't, this area is not available. So you have to sit between those stickers. You can look for areas like that. And they also have a lot more tables and chairs kind of just planted everywhere throughout both parks so that you can sit down and take a load off. I was there opening day and the next day, May 1st, and not once did I have any problem finding an area that was available for me to sit down and take a break. But they are not going to let you even have a sip of water in line while you're waiting for a ride. They're being very strict about it, so keep that in mind. If you're getting a headache or you're feeling tired or thirsty, take a 10-minute break before you decide to get in a line for a ride. Find a table, take your mask off, just let the fresh air hit your face a little bit, drink a bottle of water, and just relax, and then get in line. I found that really helped me throughout the day. Like I said, day 1, I didn't do this, and I felt it, and I felt very sick on Friday night because I had probably a little bit of heat exhaustion. I was dehydrated. So the second day I made sure that I wasn't going to let any of that happen, and I made a point of taking a break in between every 2 rides or so just to sit down for 10 minutes. I set a timer to make sure that I didn't waste too much time, and it was just really nice. I cooled down a lot and then I'd pick back up again, and I had a lot of energy, and waiting in those lines without being able to take a sip of water wasn't as bad. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I'm sure we're all used to being able just to drink water whenever we want while we're in that park, and you're not going to be able to do that right now. And then the other thing with wearing a mask that I want to point out is I've seen a few people talk about how sad they are that, you know, it might be their kid's first trip and they want to take photos of their kids without the mask on their face. And I get it. That's tough. And you're spending so much money to go to these parks and to not get those photos that you always dreamed of. But you can take two things away with that that might help you. One is that think of this as an experience in time, and those masks are kind of documenting it. I know we're all sick of wearing them and no one wants photos anymore with them on their face and in the parks and things like that. But I know that when I go back years from now and I'm looking through my photos and I see the photos of me with my mask, it's documenting that period in time of what happened. The other thing is I was trying to find ways to make my photos come alive a bit more because you are wearing that mask. You know, it's covering half your face, it's covering your smile. Or in some people's cases, maybe they're crying and you can't see that. But I found that one, taking my sunglasses off for photos. Sometimes it's tough, especially if the sun's in your face, but if you can take your sunglasses off and just really smile really big for real, even though your mouth isn't showing, smile as hard as you can because it does show in your eyes. I sent photos of myself to my mom and she's like, oh, you look so happy. And I was like, oh, she can tell even though my face is covered because, you know, I took my sunglasses off and I made sure that I had a real smile on because I felt happy. The other thing is get creative with your poses. Come up with something that you can do in the photo while you're waiting in line and do that with your whole family or do it by yourself so that your photos have a little bit more life or action in them because you're not going to be able to show your beautiful smile. So you're going to have to show your personality in other ways. But I don't think that the photos are a complete miss. I got a lot of photos that I actually really love. Some of them might be some of my favorite photos at the park. So you can still make it work. It's just going to be different. And just know that going into it, it's not going to be the same as it was last year. And that's okay, because none of us are the same as we were last year. Now, I know Disney World is allowing guests to remove their masks for their photos as long as they're socially distancing. Disneyland is not allowing that at this time. They might in the future, so keep an eye on those news updates. Disney Food Blog's a really great place to find that kind of information. Just keep an eye on it and make sure that you are up to date with all their regulations before you go to the park, because I'm sure they're going to be changing constantly as the CDC guidelines change and as California changes whatever it's enforcing with the park openings. The other thing I want to talk about is the queuing system, following the markers, and how they're practicing social distancing with the lines. You're going to get into the park and you're going to be like, let's go on Pinocchio. And you're going to get there and you're going to be like, why is this line wrapping all the way around the carousel and then all the way past Alice in Wonderland? And you're going to think, I'm never getting on this ride. And then you're going to look at Alice in Wonderland and you're going to see that ride line, and that's going to be wrapping all the way down past the Matterhorn and back out to the castle. And you're like, well, I'm not getting on that ride. And you're going to start to feel so overwhelmed thinking you're not getting on any of these rides because these lines look insane. All of that is because of the social distancing. For starters, they're making sure that everyone is 6 feet apart. There are tape markers everywhere, and the cast members are strictly enforcing that you follow those tape guidelines. So that is making those lines a lot longer than they normally would be. And also they're only putting one party in most of the cars, depending on how big the car or the boat or whatever it is. In Fantasyland, since those vehicles are quite small, it's only one party per vehicle. So I got a whole one to myself, which would normally maybe fit like 5 or 6 people. I got to go by myself. So that means that they can't put as many people through those lines as they normally would in, say, an hour's time. So the lines do move a little bit slower, but because of that social distancing, they're deceptively long. Don't be put off by that. Check the wait times on the Disney app. Make sure you have the latest version of the Disney app. It is updating regularly with new information. So before you go to the parks, make sure you update your app. And another thing I will say, I found that for the most part, the wait times on the app were exaggerated. I was timing on my watch how long a lot of the waits were taking. And for instance, Pirates looked insanely long and I thought, I'm never getting on this ride. And online it said it was a 25-minute wait. I only waited 10 minutes. So they're probably slightly exaggerated to keep guests happy. Just go in there knowing that they are strictly enforcing that 6 feet of separation. And if you actually if they feel like there's a couple people or a couple families or parties that are congregating too close together, you'll hear them walk around and remind you that if you're not traveling in the same party, please keep your distance from others. So they are enforcing that, and they are enforcing that you follow those markers on the floor. They're not always 6 feet. Sometimes they might be 12 or 18 feet, and that's because lines like Peter Pan, where you're looping on top of each other very closely, they want to make sure that that the two separate lines aren't together like this, that they're more like this. So definitely follow those markers. And another thing to watch out for while you're waiting in those lines is when you get up to just before you board the ride, a lot of those rides are actually going to tell you to stand on a certain number. Pay attention to that. The numbers are different than they were the last time you were in the parks for some of those rides, and they will relate to a corresponding vehicle that you need to get onto. And that's just to make sure that they are managing the lines and that there aren't too many people crossing over each other. You can tell that all the cast members have been working weeks to practice this, to figure it out, and to make sure it is super streamlined for when we all went back to the parks. And I was very impressed with how everything was run, and I never felt lost, and it was always very easy to find where I was supposed to go next. So if you're having a hard time deciding whether or not you actually want to buy the PhotoPass one-day option, what I recommend doing is maybe doing a bunch of PhotoPass opportunities earlier in the day, maybe for your first 2 hours, and make sure that you take photos of those ride photo codes that you see up on the screen at the end of the ride, so you can input those into your app. And then maybe around like 1 or 2, go into your app, look at all those photos. There will be a watermark on them, but you can still see if they're cute or if you like them or you don't like them. And then you can make a judgment call on whether or not you want to buy the PhotoPass package for that day. The reason why I recommend not waiting until the end of the day to decide if you want to buy the package is because if you know you bought it, it might encourage you to take more photos at the different PhotoPass opportunities, and you might walk away with some really great memories because of it. So another thing I've seen a few people either complain about or they're worried about for their trips is the difference in character meet and greets. So I can only go based on my experience and my personal opinions about them, but I actually felt that there was no magic lost in the way that Disney's doing them now. You can still get a pretty personal one-on-one interaction with those characters, and they are out in abundance. You will never see more characters in the park than you will see right now. It was incredible. You don't have to look on a map to see where they're going to be and be there at a certain time and wait in line and get jealous because the person in front of you got more time with them than you did, or when it's finally your turn, they need to take a little break and get out of the sun. They're just out and about and they are everywhere, and it was amazing. The way I felt was that I was living in their world. I was living in an actual fantasy world of Disney, and I was just lucky enough to take part in it and see them in their everyday life, interacting with each other. Rather than the other way, which I feel like they're interacting in our world. It made it so much more immersive for me. It felt like the movie Enchanted. That's what it felt like to me. I was on cloud 9 walking around the parks. Everywhere you turned, there was another character, either up on like the second floor of a building or behind a partition. And then one of the best places to actually meet characters in that central hub in California Adventure, right when you walk in, right next to Carthay Circle. A lot of the day, you could find just different characters kind of on either side of that circle of the fountain. I saw Snow White and Dopey, Anna and Elsa. I saw Oswald, Minnie, Mickey, Donald. Like, it was really incredible. Every time I walked back there was a different set of characters, and you can wait in line. And they're probably about 6 feet from you. You can have a little conversation with them, and then you do a little selfie, or someone can take a photo of you with them. It was really great. I had so many incredible character interactions, better than I ever would have had in the past. And what I really loved about it is that normally, being an adult on my own, I don't always take the time to wait in line to meet those characters. Well, now they weren't tucked away in buildings. They were just out and about, and I could wave to them. They'd wave back. We'd have a little conversation or a moment, and it just made me feel like I was a part of the magic. It was very cool. And another benefit of the way they're doing them now is if you have a little kid who is afraid of meeting those characters, or maybe it's their first time and they're very unsure and they're nervous, rather than them having a meltdown like I did probably as a kid the first time I had to meet a character. Rather than that happening, they get to see this character in real life from a safe distance. So they can kind of interact. They don't have to go up and hug, but Mickey will still notice them. He'll wave at you, he'll interact with you. You'll feel like you're part of the show, and you get to do it from a safe distance near your mom, dad, uncle, brother, whoever you feel comfortable with. So I actually thought that this might be a really good way for those younger kids who are a little unsure about meeting those characters. It gives them a new way to meet them. So don't go into it with, oh, this isn't going to be the same, I'm not going to like it. Go into it as this is a new way of interacting and greeting the characters, and pretend like you're living in their worlds a little bit, and I think you'll have a lot of fun. Okay, the question I probably got the most, and the one that you've painstakingly watched this whole video to get to, is Rise of the Resistance. If you've been on it before Disneyland shut down, it has changed a little bit. It's working closer to how it's working at Disney World as well right now. They opened it up so that you can join the boarding group from anywhere. You no longer have to be inside that park gate in order to join the boarding group. And they did this to hopefully mitigate the number of people that are going to crowd up outside that gate way before opening. By allowing you to do it at home, you don't need to get to the park at 6 a.m. on a 9 a.m. opening day to get a chance to board that group. So what I recommend to get the boarding group, and this isn't guaranteed, it's never guaranteed because it is basically a lottery system. So step number one, you have to have a park ticket, and it has to be linked to your My Disney account. I don't know if it's called My Disney for Disneyland. Disney World's My Disney Experience. I'll have to double check that. But you have to have a park ticket, and you have to have a park reservation for Disneyland on the day that you're trying to get that boarding group. If you're missing either one of those, it will not let you make a boarding group. The other thing you're going to want to do is, let's say you have a party of 5 going and you all want to get on Rise of the Resistance. Make sure each of those people have their own ticket and that their ticket is linked in your account. This way, when you go to meet that boarding group, you're not wasting any time adding new people to that group. And let's say, to give you an example, let's say there are 2 adults going and 3 kids, and only 2 of the adults are going to have a phone with the app. Have both adults set up that app with all the people going on that trip. So you can have both of you could have all the same 5 people listed, the same 5 tickets. This way you both can kind of have a chance at getting that boarding group. Now, the next tip I'll say, this has worked for me both times. It could be because I'm lucky. It could be because I go in smaller groups. I've never been on Rise of Resistance in a party bigger than 2. I do think the larger the group, the harder it is to get that boarding group. But what I like to do is I set an alarm for, right now they're opening up the boarding groups at 7 a.m. So I set an alarm at 6:55 just to remind myself, all right, get everything ready. I close out the app. I'll sign out, I'll close it out entirely just to make sure that like the cache is cleared and that it's fresh, because sometimes you'll find that when you're trying to get that boarding group, it's just pulling up previous data and it didn't refresh with all the important information that you need. And then that only takes about 10 seconds. And then I'll log back in. So I'll open the app and I'll sign in just to make sure it's signed in. I'll close the app out again. And then I kind of just watch that timer tick down. At 6:58 or 6:58 30 seconds, I'll go back into the app, and then I'll head over to where you get that Rise of the Resistance boarding group. And in the app, it's going to be similar to where you found that PhotoPass option. It's under the main menu, and you're going to look for what says virtual queues. You'll click on that. So I would recommend clicking on that just after 6:59. What I like to do sometimes too is I will bring up the official time website so I can watch those seconds tick down, and maybe at like 6:59 and 30 seconds I'll click into that virtual queue thing. What you don't want to do is once you're in virtual queue, you're going to see, come on, there we go, you're going to see that. Don't click that join boarding group until it is 7 a.m. If you do it too soon, you're not going to be able to join, And by the time you get back out and the system refreshes and you go back in, you might already be too late. They go that fast. So the second, you want to watch your clock on your phone. The second it hits 7 a.m., you click join that boarding group. It's going to ask you who in your app, so like who you have associated with your account, who do you want to join that boarding group with you. There's an option just to select all to make it easy for you, and then you just go to the next option and you wait to see if you got that boarding group. It is so fast. Like I did this at 7 a.m. and by 7:05 a.m. I heard tons of people cheering because they all got their boarding groups. I was lucky enough to get one too, and I think by like, or not even 7:05, like 7 o'clock and 5 seconds. It was that fast. And then by 7:02, I think all the boarding group passes were gone. It was instant. Everyone went in there, they all got their boarding passes, and it was done. So you have to be on your game. You need to have that alarm set. You need to have everyone in that app prior to even trying to get that boarding group. And you need to be prepared to be disappointed because not everyone can ride Rise of Resistance, unfortunately. But Disney is splitting up how they're doing it. Before they gave out all boarding passes for the whole day. Now they're doing 2 different boarding group windows. The first one is at 7 and the second one is at 1. So if you didn't get that 7 a.m. one, set an alarm for 12:50, 12:55 and do that process again. Here's the kicker, which I thought was really great because I just out of curiosity tried to see if I can get a second boarding group. Disney is not allowing anyone who already was on a boarding group earlier in that morning to get a boarding group for the afternoon. So there's a really good chance that you're going to get that second window. So don't get too disheartened if you miss out on that first one. There's a good chance you'll be able to get the second one. Just be prepared. It is very stressful the first time you do it. You feel very nervous. You're worried you're going to make a mistake, but it is really straightforward. Disney did a great job of designing the app, and you don't really, once you see it once, you'll remember it for every time after that. All right, so I don't want to go too into detail into trip itineraries for the day because that's a whole other video, and this video is already getting crazy long. But I just wanted to give you an idea of what I focused on first. So for Disneyland specifically, there is the new Snow White ride, or the new reimagined Snow White ride, and also they made a bunch of changes to the Haunted Mansion. So I noticed that those rides during the cast member previews were having the longer waits. I decided that was going to be my focus. Haunted Mansion is my favorite, so I chose that as ride number 1. I went straight there, and I don't know if they're going to be doing this every day, but in order to mitigate those crowds, they were letting people into the park prior to 9 o'clock, and they actually started running some of those rides around 8:30, and I got on Haunted Mansion at 8:35. So keep an eye out for that because you might be able to get into the park and start riding before it's even open, and that was really cool. I was able to get a lot done that way. Anyway, I did Haunted Mansion first, and I'm glad I did because within an hour of opening, that had about a 50-minute wait. And once I did Haunted Mansion, I jumped straight over to do that Snow White ride, and that was about a 40-minute wait in the direct sunlight, and it was pretty tough, but definitely worth it. I'm glad I got both of those out of the way, and then I didn't have to worry about whether or not I was going to get a chance to go on them later in the day. And since the crowds are pretty low, I was able to pretty much do everything else with very little wait time. Now, the rides in Disneyland that I am noticing do have a higher wait right now are Indiana Jones, Pirates, Haunted Mansion, and the Snow White ride. I think they had the highest wait times, and it's partly due to how few people they can actually run through the ride at any given time. Peter Pan, surprisingly, was around 10 to 15 minutes every time I rode it. I was shocked because I've never seen that line under 45 minutes. And I don't know if it's just because people were more interested in doing the other rides, or I don't know what it was, but it was amazing to actually get to go on Peter Pan several times because prior to this weekend, I think I had only ever been on it in Disneyland like twice. So that's what I would do first in Disneyland. Haunted Mansion and Snow White. And then from there, I think Pirates and Indiana Jones. Those are going to be your longest waits. Everything else should be pretty fast for you to get onto. And then for California Adventure, the rides that I saw taking or having a longer wait, your usual Radiator Springs, no surprise there. Still wasn't that bad. I saw it at 30 minutes, which is a lot shorter than it normally is. And then Toy Story Midway Mania, because they can only ride one party per vehicle, and I think they might actually be skipping vehicles as well. And then Guardians, just because of the nature of how Guardians runs. I think I saw that one at about 30 minutes. But there was even a time when Monsters had a 30-minute wait. So it just depends where people are kind of like migrating. Oh, and Soarin'. So those are your big rides. They typically always have a long wait at California Adventure anyway. My recommendation for you, for the one to get on first, I'm going to say probably Soarin'. I think it had the longest wait every time I checked, and they can only fit so many people into that building at a time, and it is a brutal line to wait in. After that, I'd probably say Toy Story, Midway Mania, and then Cars, and then Guardians. Guardians wasn't too bad of a wait because a lot of it is in shade, so I didn't find it as tough to do. The rest of the rides in California Adventure, I'd say averaged between like 5-10 minutes, 15 at the max. So yeah, I think California Adventure was a little easier to do, in my opinion. But keep in mind, June 4th, Avengers Campus is opening, and I think California Adventure is going to be a whole new ballgame. It's going to be similar to probably what Rise of the Resistance was like when that opened. I think it's going to be a very intense park opening to get over onto that new Spider-Man ride. So just keep that in mind. If you're going on or after that June 4th mark, California Adventure is going to be a lot busier probably than Disneyland for a while. Another thing that surprised me, even though I knew it was going to happen, was that every store has an entrance and an exit. You cannot exit in the same door that you're entering in. They're doing this just to ease the traffic in and out, to stop people from being too close to each other, and to make it easier on the cast members to keep count of how many people are in any given building, because they all do have lower capacities. You know, that everyone, I think all of the shops are operating, they were operating at like 10 to 15% capacity, which I'll tell you what, it was fantastic for shopping. No one bumping into me. I had tons of room. I had lots of like space to shop, to look at things. It was a really great experience, but it also means that you might wait in line to get into a shop. So keep that in mind. If you want to do some shopping, there might be a line for that. And also, just so you know, when you're on Main Street USA, I learned this the hard way a couple times. The entrance to those two shops that line Main Street, they're not two shops, they're multiple shops that are connected. The entrance to them is at the end by the train station. I made the mistake of kind of like walking down and then deciding that I wanted to go into a store, only to realize I had to walk all the way back to the beginning, which doesn't sound that bad, but I was already tired and it was really hot, and it was pretty tough for me to go back down, to walk back again, to then leave the park. It was just a lot of extra walking that wasn't necessary. So keep that in mind. The same things going on at California Adventure, except that at California Adventure, when you walk in, the store on the left, or that line of stores, the entrance will be towards the park entrance. On the right, you'll enter down by the ice cream shop by Starbucks. So that one's at the opposite. Just something to keep in mind, that when you go to walk into stores, make sure you're walking in the right way, because I did make that mistake a few times myself. Another thing to note, that I made the mistake 2 days in a row. I read somewhere or heard somewhere that the Disneyland train is stopping running at 3 p.m. and I missed my opportunity to ride the train 2 days in a row. I was so bummed because I love going on that, so I'm definitely going to do that first next time I go back. But if riding that train is important to you, make sure you do it early in the day, because they do stop running it a lot earlier than they normally would. And then this isn't really a tip, but I just wanted to give you a quick few thoughts on the new Snow White ride. I know a lot of people, like myself, were really bummed that they were changing it, because that is such a classic, and they used to have it over in Disney World and they've since changed it. So this was the last one, and it was really great that Disneyland still had it. I was pleasantly surprised. They kept a lot of the original ride elements. I don't want to give too much away because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who doesn't want to know, but it definitely still has elements from the original. You're going to recognize a lot of the scenes, but it just felt more vibrant and alive, and I think it's okay that it is slightly less scary, because even I find that ride a little intimidating sometimes when I'm tired or I'm not paying attention. That witch has scared me once before. So for little kids, it is in Fantasyland, so it makes sense that they want to make it a little bit more child friendly. and it's still a really great ride. I rode it 3 times while I was in the parks this weekend. I can't wait to go on it again. That's all I'm gonna say. You definitely should check it out for yourself. I don't think you'll be disappointed if you love the original one. All right, so just to give you an idea of what to expect when you're in the park overall with the new health and safety measures that are being taken, there are hand washing stations dotted throughout both parks, so you don't necessarily have to find a bathroom to wash your hands anymore. They just have them out. They have sinks. You can actually use water and soap, and that's really great. There are hand sanitizer stations everywhere as well. But I find that the hand sanitizer, after you use it a few times, your hands just feel like grimy and gross, and you just want to like actually wash that off. So I really appreciated all those hand washing stations. I know Disney World has actually started to get rid of them. I don't know how long they're going to last in Disneyland, but if you're worried about being able to wash your hands regularly, you don't have to, because they have hand sanitizers at the beginning, at the end of every ride, and those hand washing stations are dotted wherever they can fit them. The other thing, as I mentioned earlier too, is the social distancing. They are enforcing that. There are more cast members walking around the parks than I think I've ever seen before, and they are making sure that we are all following those rules. And remember that these aren't just Disneyland's rules. These are the rules that are being given to them by the state of California, and they have to abide by them in order to stay open, and we want Disneyland to stay open. So it's in our best interest to follow all of those rules that they are telling us to follow. And then also you'll notice when you're in lines for rides, or even in some ride vehicles, there are new plexiglass windows to prevent you from being too close to other members of different parties. So for instance, the Rise of Resistance, those vehicles, they have plexiglass between the rows. It does make seeing the ride or parts of the rides a little difficult in some instances, but for the most part I didn't find that it hindered my experience too much. But just know that going in, that these are the different measures that they're taking. I felt very safe while there. I feel like all the cast members are working really hard to make sure that we follow all those rules, and that not only are we keeping ourselves safe, we're keeping them safe. So I just don't want you to be surprised when you get into the parks and you see plexiglass everywhere, hand washing stations. I noticed it at first, and then probably within a few hours, the magic took over and it all just kind of blended in, and it really wasn't that big of a deal. Because of mobile ordering, you are going to be using your phone a lot more than maybe you've used in the past, and it does eat up the battery pretty fast. And you don't want to make the mistake of being in the park without a backup battery pack. I did once while I was at Touch of Disney. I didn't think I was going to be using my phone that much, but then I ended up using it constantly to order food, and my battery died and I still needed food. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? I need my phone, otherwise I can't order anything. So I was forced to buy a fuel rod. Now those fuel rods are really great if you're in a pinch, you need to charge something and you didn't bring another backup charger or anything like that. But they are $30, I think, free refills in Disneyland. So what they are, they're called fuel rods. You can find them on the maps if you're unsure. The one in California Adventure is over in the back corner between, where was it? Oh, it's outside, I can't remember the name of the shop. I think it's Bing Bong Shop, but it was outside of there. You can find the fuel rod station. And then the one in Disneyland is down by Winnie the Pooh. And it's just like a little machine. You put a credit card in and it drops out a fuel rod for you. Now the reason why I recommend not using these is because they are kind of awful. Like I said, great in a pinch, but they charge incredibly slow. You might get like a 10% boost in a 40-minute window, and they run out of batteries faster than they actually help you. So while yes, you can keep going and picking up new fuel rods as much as you want to keep charging your phone, they are in the back corners of the parks. So it might be really exhausting for you to keep having to trek back there just to get another fresh charge for your phone. I find that they're only really useful if you need just a little boost in order to make a phone call or to be able to get to your car before you can charge it. But I wouldn't rely on that as your main source of charging for your device. Definitely bring a backup charger with you to the parks. This isn't a tip, it's just something that I've seen a lot of people ask, so I just wanted to let you all know that they are still doing the rider swap and disability access for people who need it. regardless of the social distancing measures or COVID regulations that are in place. So you can still do ride or swap. If you want to ride a ride and you need to leave a small kid behind with another adult, that's still okay, and they are still doing disability access. I saw it quite a bit while I was there. It's still running the exact same way it did prior. I think for disability access, you just go up that exit line in most cases. If you're unsure, ask a cast member and they'll be able to point you in the right direction. I know for Pirates of the Caribbean, they actually have a special entrance for anyone that needs disability access. So before you get into line, if you're not sure where you go, they have cast members marking the end of the lines for pretty much every ride because of how long those lines are getting with that 6 feet of distance. So just look for them. They have big sticks with signs on them. They're very hard to miss, and you can just ask them and they'll point you in the right direction. All right, so the last thing I want to leave you all with, just my personal opinion, the magic is still there. I promise it is still there. It's a little different, but if you go in there knowing that it's not necessarily going to be the same trip you had last year, I don't think you're going to walk away disappointed. I felt overwhelmed with joy and emotion. I cried so many times. I was just so happy to be back in the park, and I felt the magic everywhere I went. It felt like everything I could have dreamed it could feel like. So don't hesitate to go to the park if you're worried it's not going to be enough for you. But I will say that I see a lot of people asking, like, is it worth going now? Should I go? Should I wait? That's a decision that only you can make for your family. So you're really going to have to think about those pros and cons and think about what's important to you for your Disney vacation. If going to Disney is a once in a lifetime experience for you, it's something you saved up years for and you don't know if you'll get to go again, that might be now might be a time to wait for things to open up a bit more until they are doing parades and fireworks and you can't have those character interactions or the character dining. You might want to wait for those to come back if you think this is just kind of your once in a lifetime magical trip. But if you're more local and you do get to go regularly and this isn't your first time and you know you'll be back, don't hesitate on going just because things are a little different. It is still worth it. It was so much fun. I did not miss fast passes at all. I actually found that a lot of the lines had shorter waits because there weren't fast passes, and the cast members are just, they are just as amazing as ever. It was truly an incredible, magical, amazing, and memorable experience. One of the very best Disney experiences I've ever had. So don't hesitate to go if this is something that you are used to doing and you're just worried about it being different. It's so worth it, and I don't think you'll be disappointed.